This is Bruce Bochy, and you're listening to the Ranger Report.
The Ranger Report. Yeah, the Ranger Report. If you want the inside scoop, listen to the Ranger Report. Oh, here we go.
This is the Ranger Report podcast. News, insights, predictions, interviews, and information about the World Series champion Texas Rangers, from the major leagues to the minor leagues. And now, here are your hosts, Ben Dieter, Tyler Nilson, and CJ Berryman.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Ranger Report podcast, brought to you by Walton's. Walton's Everything But the Meat, part of the Fans First Sports Network, and of course presented by Dallas Sports Nation on the Preferred Health Solutions hotline today. I am Ben Dieter. You can find me on, I guess, formerly Twitter at BDieter75.
I am CJ Berryman. You can find me on the X app at CJB_RR.
And I am Tyler Nilson. You can find me on the X at TPN1983.
And today we are joined by Rangers Radio Network color commentator, I guess, Matt Hicks. Matt, how you doing, sir?
Doing well. How about you fellas?
Doing
great.
Cold, great now, but it's cold and rainy and windy weather right here in Amarillo right now. So it's been kind of a challenge. Hey, how's your Cologne game these days? Did you upgrade?
I have neither upgraded nor downgraded. I basically am Cologne less.
All right. So is Tyler.
It requires a special occasion for me to dip into the Cologne bag, and there's not much in there. So I don't know. Maybe I'll get something for Christmas.
I told the boys I was going to have to do this. I told you I wore a bunch of different colognes depending on what I'm wearing. I've got, I don't know if you can see it. I got this for when I wear blue.
We'll be able to see them.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to see them. I've got a white. I'll just do this real quickly.
You're vanishing.
I've got a red.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
I've got a green.
So wait a minute. So your cologne choices are color coded?
Based on what color I'm wearing. Yes, sir.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah.
He is our fashion forward member of the show.
I've been told I'm different. I've been called worse, Matt.
All right, let's start, Matt, tonight. What was it like? I know it's been a little while now, but what was it like getting to see Eric make that call when the Rangers became World Series champions?
Well, I tell you what, it was a special moment, and I think that you can take a look at how all those playoff series progressed and how the World Series was progressing. And I think we all knew that it was coming. Ranger fans may have been a little weary after the Game 2 loss to Arizona and the way the Rangers lost it, getting blown out in that game. But then going to Phoenix and winning games 3 and 4. And I had a feeling when I got up that morning that we were going to win it there. We weren't going to go back home to have to win this thing. And so I knew that it was inevitable. And people say, yeah, well, Matt, Zach Gallen was certainly not cooperating because he carried a perfect game into the 7th inning in that ball game. But I really felt like not only were we going to get through and punch through at some point, but when we did, that was going to be it. And so indeed, like the Rangers had done all postseason, when they scored first, they won, and they did get to Gallen for that run in the 7th inning. So at that point, I knew it was going to happen. And, it wasn't like, obviously I was curious, but I didn't ask him, hey, what do you have planned? It's not appropriate. Not one of those things you talk about. I'm sitting there waiting like everybody else listening on the radio to hear what he's got to say. And he had worked out a few things and he knew that the one thing that he wanted to say, the one line that he wanted to say was, Rangers fans, you are not dreaming. And so, that hit your ears the same time it hit my ears. But, just getting a chance to sit there were only three of us in the booth, me and Eric and our engineer, Walt Ellis. Jared was already downstairs, preparing to interview guys on the field and in the clubhouse. So there were only two of us that got to witness it, firsthand there next to Eric. And it was definitely a very special moment, and one that I'll always remember.
And it's one that both of you deserve. I mean, y'all been doing this a long time. Eric's been doing it since Moby Dick was a minnow, and for the Rangers. And, it was just one of those. It was one of those things, and I'm gonna turn this over to Tyler real quick, because you talked about that loss, that one loss that we had in Arizona. We had a Ranger Report member on location for that.
Yeah, Matt, I was there. I was unfortunately the one. You can blame me for the loss. I was there for Game 2 of the World Series, and I'm the culprit.
Now I've got so my wife and son went to Game 1.
Okay.
And then I had a nephew come to town from Michigan, and he and my son went to Game 2. And right now we're blaming it on my nephew. But if you want to take a part of the blame, that's okay.
No,
hey, Matt, put it all on me. I'm good with it.
We're putting it half on him and half on his cousin for getting the idea to go. So
yeah, because he went to that series the very first with the Astros, which they lost that game too. The game he went to. And so, like we've said on this podcast previously, my cousin is barred from going to any important Ranger games from now on, because every time he goes to a game, they lose.
They better be regular season, midsummer games.
Right.
But anyway, just kind of piggyback on that. Let's kind of start off with how it happened, and obviously the Seattle debacle, I guess you could call it, where the division got kind of fumble-farted away. But apparently one team got on that plane to go to Tampa, and another team got off as they flew over home to go play Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that's a real interesting time in the development, if I can use that word, of this team late in the season, because we went on that final road trip to Anaheim and Seattle, and there were a variety of avenues that the Rangers could take as far as the postseason was concerned. And even when we went to Seattle, I think there were still four possibilities. There was winning the division and waiting for 4 or 5 days before playing in the division series. There was losing the division but qualifying for the postseason, in which case still in play were trips to either Minneapolis or Tampa. And then there was the very real possibility of not making the postseason at all. And that lived on until the next to last day of the regular season, when the Rangers finally clinched with their only win in that 4-game series in Seattle. So there was so much that was up in the air. I tell people all the time, when we packed for that trip, number one, we can only pack one large piece of luggage to be stowed on the plane. We were going to a warm weather climate and a cold weather climate, and then we could possibly stay on the road for another week in both a cold climate like Minneapolis or a warm climate like Tampa, and then potentially go to a place like Baltimore. So there was a lot that was going on right there. And the way the team played in Seattle was not awe-inspiring. I mean, you drop 3 out of 4, even though you win the third game and you clinch a playoff spot. I that was the only clincher that I got to be a part of the celebration down in the clubhouse. And I think maybe you remember the whole hullabaloo from the Astros reporter
Alex
saying
Bregman and the Astros reporter.
Yeah, and the Rangers just absolutely, don't know what they're doing. They partied hard. Well, I'm here to tell you that celebration lasted for about 5 minutes, and it was rather muted because, remember, the Astros game that night was still in progress. And they were playing the Diamondbacks, and so there was this release of emotion. Hey, we know we're in the postseason, and certainly this team deserved that. But shortly thereafter, it was like, hey, the Astros Diamondbacks game is going on. We need to watch that. So the guys all peeled into the kitchen to watch the end of that game. And of course, the Astros won it, which, set up the scenarios for the final game of the regular season. But I really only had time to interview a couple of guys, and then I did a couple of more interviews after the celebration had ended. But I mean, that was very subdued from my experience with post-game, celebrations, whether it's making the playoffs or winning the division or winning a postseason series. So we get on the plane knowing that we've got to fly from Seattle all the way to Tampa. It's the last time that we were on the team charter because once we got to the postseason, there were so many people traveling, we got bumped to the second plane. But I'm here to tell you that a direct flight from Seattle to Tampa is 5 hours and 5 minutes. And if you're seated on the right side of the plane, you can look out and you can see the Metroplex. Then, all during that flight, one of the things that really impressed me was how businesslike everybody was. And in fact, the Rangers were already thinking about what they were going to be doing in that series, that short series with Tampa. So much so that at one point in the flight, Bruce Bochy, who of course rides in the front of the plane, came back toward the middle of the plane. He was chatting with a couple of guys who were seated near us, Brett Hayes and one of our analytics guys, Bobby Mandelo. And he talked to others throughout the flight, just talking about potential scenarios in that series against Tampa and, how the Rangers could best make adjustments to scenarios that would pop up late in games. And I found it, as I was on that flight, I found it to be, I'm not too sure what the word is here, but I got a sense of not necessarily relief, but that, these guys are completely focused on the task at hand, and I think we're going to be okay. And so after seeing the way that the guys were, taking the end of the regular season on that flight, getting prepared to play the Rays, I felt like these guys' heads are in the right spot, and I felt pretty good going into that series. I certainly couldn't predict that the Rangers would sweep the way they did. But, I think it's a testament to the ability of that club and everybody associated with the team to focus and just get the job done.
Tyler?
Yeah, Matt, I think you bring up a really good point about this team. Also, you look at teams, throughout the whole season, they face adversity, whether it's injuries or, it's always the next man up mentality. And coming into that, of course, we came in limping into the postseason, but they punched their ticket. They got there, and obviously they were the best team in MLB in the postseason when it mattered, as that shown. They didn't lose a game on the road. They went in and handled business in Tampa. And obviously that momentum carried over to Baltimore, and you've seen what the rest did. Of course, we knew the Astros series was going to be tough. It's a division series, obviously, but them two teams hate each other. And we kind of figured it'd at least go to Game 6 or Game 7 in our predictions. That's what we all three said. And they went to Game 7. And then once we got past the Astros and we realized we weren't playing the Phillies, I felt a lot more comfortable with the Arizona Diamondbacks, which I think y'all all did. So I'll let y'all take it from there.
Yeah, I think everybody probably felt like the Diamondbacks were a more beatable team than the Phillies, but also, given the way that Arizona got there, that was a very formidable club. And so, but the one thing about the Rangers, they didn't take any team lightly. It wasn't, I really do get the feeling from the players and the staff that it wasn't so much like a sense of relief, like, ooh, we're getting to play the Diamondbacks, that's better. To convey this, it really is guys doing their job. And it's like, okay, we can put all the Philly stuff aside because we don't have to deal with that anymore. Let's take the Diamondbacks material and let's focus on what we need to do to beat this team. And Tyler, you're right about that next man up mentality. One of the things I think when I get asked the question about Bruce Bochy and what he brought to the table this year, I think one of the things that he did was he made everybody feel important and that they were going to contribute something to this team being special, regardless of whether that person was Corey Seager or Marcus Semien or whether it was Evan Carter coming up late in the season, or Cody Bradford, or any of these guys. It was all 26 guys who were active, and those guys who were traveling with the club that might be activated, like, for example, Ezekiel Duran in the final 2 games of the World Series. And even though, Zeke didn't have an impact, he knew that there was an opportunity that he might get into a game and he would have to be productive. And so he had to stay ready. It's funny. I don't remember which game it was in the postseason. I don't think it was in the World Series. It may have been the championship series. Anyway, we're taking batting practice, and Zeke is in the cage taking BP, and our hitting coach, Tim Hires, turns to me and he goes, "Best hitter not on a postseason roster right now." And it may have been true, but I mean, that's what's necessary, enabling a team to get to where the Rangers did and to be successful. You've got guys that know that if a player or 2 players or 3 players go down, the guys who are going to fill in are guys who are capable of getting the job done. So there really was this mentality on the club that everybody had a hand in it, even those guys that weren't on the active roster for any particular time during the postseason.
Right. The thing that got me the most during the postseason, Matt, and I'll say this, was I was so nervous about the bullpen going into the postseason. But my goodness, guys like Josh Sborz and, especially Jose Leclerc, just nothing seemed to faze him. They kept saying that on television too. And you guys mentioned it on the radio that, he, no matter what, like when he gave up that big home run to Jose Altuve in Game 5 of the American League Championship Series, came out the next day, no problem whatsoever. I mean, nothing seemed to faze anyone in this bullpen, and they were such a weakness for the majority of the season. I mean, do you think it's that next man up mentality, or do you think they just built confidence as the postseason went along?
It's the ebbs and flows of individuals in the bullpen. That's probably the most difficult thing to put your finger on and say, why was this guy? Because you can point to pretty much everybody in the bullpen. Why was this guy so bad for a stretch and couldn't get the job done? And then at another stretch, and it turns out that all the guys got really good at the right time, but why for particular stretches were they so dominant when previously they weren't? And of course, and it wasn't just going from bad to worse. You had guys being very good and then being not so good and then being pretty good. And it's the life of being in the bullpen. At times, I think, one of the most important elements outside of having really nasty stuff is having confidence in that stuff and being confident to be able to throw all of your pitches knowing that you're going to get a good result. It's one thing to have, and of course, Leclerc has a variety of pitches. He's got that cut change, that Slombio. He's got a straight change. He was throwing a cutter this year. And the one thing that seemed to go hand in hand with Leclerc having success was him getting that really good velocity back, being able to throw 97, 98 as opposed to throwing 93, 94, 95. And when he had that excellent velocity, it seemed like everything else, played up really well. But just being confident in throwing all of those pitches, sometimes a guy will be warming up in the bullpen, and maybe one of his pitches he doesn't feel too good about. Maybe doesn't have the right grip, doesn't have the right feel on the ball. And so he might come into the game going, I'm really not going to use that pitch. And then the first time he throws it, it's electric. And so from warming up in the bullpen to coming into the game, a guy might not have confidence in one particular pitch in the bullpen, come into the game, throw it once, and all of a sudden it's a surefire pitch. How do you explain that? I don't know how to explain it. And I've had guys talk about it going the other way, where they're warming up in the bullpen, whether they're a starter warming up at the beginning of the game or whether they're a reliever coming in late. and their stuff just being dynamite in the bullpen, and they've got all this confidence, and they come into the game, and all of a sudden it's like they forget how to pitch. I can't explain that. And so I certainly can't explain the ups and downs of Leclerc or Spores, who, you know, when you talk to pitching coaches and you talk to other guys in the bullpen and you talk to our catchers and they tell you how nasty Josh's stuff is, I can't explain why he had, you know, those periods where he just wasn't very good. Nor can I explain why he was so very good in the postseason, but thank goodness he was. And if you ask me a question about Aroldis Chapman, I might just walk out of the room, because I can't explain why, you know, Aroldis at times couldn't find the strike zone. But I was actually having a conversation earlier today, and Chapman came up, and it's like, I didn't feel good about him finding the strike zone, but I also felt pretty good about nobody hitting 102 or 103.
Right.
So it's like you ride the wave, you ride the roller coaster. You hope for the best, but I think that one of the reasons why the Rangers were as successful as they were in the postseason is pretty much, you know, that bullpen had gotten itself fully in the
And see, that segues to a perfect question that I had lined up to. We just had Parker Bridwell on, who used to pitch for the Angels. I think you remember him.
Yep.
That's actually Tyler's cousin.
Okay.
So yeah, he's from the same hometown as both of us, and he was talking about the analytics and how he hated them. And all that good stuff, because the analytical managers and analytical pitching coaches or whatever, they're out there, they're looking at numbers and not feel of the game. Mm-hmm. Now, an example of the opposite of that was Bruce Bochy, because Spores came in, he got that big strikeout to end the 8th, and you're thinking that Leclerc's warming up, Leclerc's going to come in and close this thing out. No, he's like, Spores just got out of a very highly emotional moment. I think Leclerc would have come in had the score remained 1-0, but then the Rangers obviously,
I don't know what the options are.
Right.
Did what they did in the top of the 9th, but you know, Bochy, and I think I don't know this for a fact, but I think Bochy said, you know what, he just had that huge emotional, highly intense inning to get us out of it. Now he's got runs and he's relaxed and he's got pitches left in him. Let's let him go back out there and close this thing out.
Yeah. One of the things I think when it comes to Bruce Bochy and analytics, Boch wants all the numbers. He wants all of that information. He wants to know as much as he possibly can. In any competition, in any battle, you want as much information as possible. And Bochy does, but he wants that information so that he can make the best possible decision that he can. And he's not making the decision based upon, okay, here are all these numbers on one sheet of paper, and here's the situation we're facing on another, and how do they met? He uses the information that's provided in addition to what's actually going on in the game and what he sees in the faces of his players and what he observes from the opponent. And it's like, I'm absolutely positive that he felt like at that moment, after we took the 5-0 lead, that Josh can get the job done. There's no reason to go to Leclerc now if I think Spores can get 3 outs. But if Josh does run into trouble, then at that point we can go to Leclerc and we can, tie this thing up, and get it won. But interesting, Spores and the way that he was used, he hadn't really been used much all season long in that really extended role, which he ended up doing, to lock it down in Game 5. Interesting at bat, I believe it was in that 8th inning with the 1-0 lead when he was facing Pavin Smith, and he ended up striking out Pavin Smith. And this is something that we mentioned during the course of the broadcast. There was the game within the game during that particular at bat, because those two were teammates in college at the University of Virginia when they won the 2015 NCAA tournament. And I asked Josh afterwards, I said, you know, it was running through our minds, and I know that paramount in your mind was the task at hand and what you needed to do to get Pavin Smith out. I said, but, you know, did you let a little bit of, you know, nostalgia creep in there? I mean, here's a buddy of mine. Here's a guy that I won a NCAA title with, and here we are in the World Series. I mean, did you let that filter in? And he goes, Matt, let me tell you what filtered in. Earlier this season, when we were facing the Angels, I'm pretty sure it was Matt Hicks with the Angels at the time. He was facing him, and Matt Hicks was on that 2015 Cavalier team as well. And Hicks homered off of Spores. And so what Josh said is that at that moment that he's facing Pavin Smith, he's thinking back to the home run he gave up to Hicks. And he's like, I am not letting another teammate beat me here. He goes, not only am I not letting him beat me, I'm striking him out. And that's exactly what he did.
That curveball.
Yeah. So if you wonder what's going through it, you know, when guys say, oh, no, you know, I'm completely focused on my job. Yeah, he was mostly focused on his job, but he was thinking about giving up the Hicks home run and knowing that he wanted to strike out Smith because he wasn't getting on base. I was striking him out.
That's great.
Hey, when did you and I guess Eric, when did y'all kind of, you know, during the season kind of look at each other and realize, hey, this team is good. You know, they have a chance to make the postseason. And once they got in, when did it really click that, hey, this team has a really good chance of winning the World Series? Was there ever a point or a moment in the season that ever happened? Or
I don't know as though there was a point in the season where I thought, hey, this team can win the World Series. I think there were points all along the regular season where we thought, it's going to be a postseason club. Don't know how far they're going to get, but we certainly felt like the team was capable of making it to the postseason. You know, we started the season by sweeping the Phillies of all people. We're like, well, if you can do that, remember we won one of those games by 13 runs. This is a team that can get some things done. Now, like you're going to have in any season, that you have the ups and downs. And so I think that, you know, for a pretty good chunk of the year, and definitely for a period leading up to about 2 weeks prior to the All-Star break, we felt like this was a postseason club. Then the team kind of limped into the All-Star break, and you felt like, all right, well, after the All-Star game, this is going to be a little bit of a struggle. But then there were some good series there, and I think that I was feeling pretty good about the team making it to the postseason until we had that series at home against Houston in early September.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
The way the Astros
bombed the crap out of this.
That's a really good. That's better than any way I could have said it, TJ. And I just, after that series, I'm like, oh man, maybe we ran out of gas. Maybe we just don't have it. But then what happened after that? We go to Toronto and take 4 from the Blue Jays,
right?
And made it look easy.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, well, if this team can play like that, and you know, who knew that was a precursor of what we were going to see in the postseason on the road? You know, right. That's when my faith was restored in the team series in Toronto.
All right, Matt, before we let you go, the holidays are coming up. You got any big holiday plans this year?
We're going to stay home. Our son is coming home this Friday, and so we're going to spend Christmas together here. My wife and I took a trip right after Thanksgiving to San Antonio. We had not taken a little mini vacation in a long time where we got in the car and drove. And so it was really nice to be able to go down to San Antonio. We got there the day after Thanksgiving in time to watch the Riverwalk Christmas parade, which we had never seen before. So that was nice. So we're planning on having a quiet Christmas at home. And then I think we're probably going to, we've got a lot lined up with the Rangers with caravans and Fan Fest at the end of the month of January. We got a lot going on with the team in January. And then I think we're probably going to take a little vacation in February before spring training hits.
Well, so are you going to introduce yourself from here on out as World Series champion announcer Matt Hicks, since you were there for it?
It's funny. I just celebrated my birthday, and my wife got me a Rangers World Series champion polo, and I intend on wearing that quite a bit. Let me tell you.
There you go.
Tyler's got one. Look, show him, Tyler.
Well, that's a sweatshirt, but
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'll introduce myself that way. I don't ever feel that bold, but it's been a really nice off season to be able to talk about not just getting to the World Series, but winning the World Series for a Ranger fan base that has been so starved for this. We've signed some autographs. We've had some autograph signing sessions. And the other day at the Toy Drive hosted by John Gray and his wife, Jacqueline, so many fans just said thank you just for the season in general and for winning the World Series and how much that meant to so many people. And it's been a humbling experience to hear so many people say that.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and talk about this. The night that the World Series, the clincher, me and Tyler and Ben are texting each other back and forth throughout the game, ad nauseum, whatnot. And then all of a sudden, once Wars got the strikeout, we didn't text each other again the rest of the night.
Really?
I was too busy crying. Yeah.
Yeah. It was so, and those two cried, and for whatever reason, I have a hard time crying. Not like I try to, but I'm not one of those. I'm a tough guy. I don't cry. No,
it's all the cologne.
Yeah,
it's all the cologne, TJ.
But so that happened, and I mean, I thought I would cry. Instead, I just sat there,
stunned,
in awe, and just watched the celebration and just enjoyed it and soaked it in. And we still can't. Me and Tyler were talking about this last night. Well, all three of us were talking about this last night in our text chain. We still think it's a dream,
Yeah. Really? Well, Eric told you that it wasn't.
That's right. He did. He did. You're right. He did.
I should listen to him.
Matt Hicks, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time.
As always, I enjoy talking to you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Thanks, Matt. Have a good
night. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for listening to the Ranger Report podcast. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, and at therangerreport.com.